So, DRS, as we have the four other games in Major League Baseball today, we have all five teams in the American League Central in action on this Thursday, including a couple of divisional duels. We start in Minnesota. Pablo Lopez gets the start for the Twins. They're a minus 154 home money line favorite in the Twin Cities. The Twins went on the road yesterday in Milwaukee. They were down 3-1 entering the seventh. They had a 5-run seventh inning. They ended up winning 7-3 over the Brew Crew. Twins, Guardians. Cleveland off to a very good start as well here in this Major League Baseball season. Who wins today in Minneapolis?
Hey, take a look at Bybee on the mound here for the Guardians. And the one thing that we're going off of basically is last year's statistics. He was okay last year. ISO power numbers a little bit elevated here to right-handed batters. But against lefties here, he's a right-handed pitcher, which is interesting. He was absolutely dominant. And if we're taking a look at early season for the Minnesota Twins, a lot of these batters been like 10 at-bats against right-handed pitching. So not a lot to go off of. But the one thing that we do know early, the Minnesota Twins are having a power struggle here. ISO power numbers, you like to see that, Ben, 160, 170 or higher. Let's take a look at the 9 that's expected to be in the lineup today. 083, 077, 100, 0, 0, 100, 143, 0, and 0. Not a lot of power here options for the Minnesota Twins at the plate. And again, looking at this ball game, 49 degrees at first pitch, Ben. Winds blowing in from right field at 11 miles an hour, so you're not going to get that boost of going out. Now, if we flip it over to the other side, Pablo Lopez was very good last year, dominating against right-handed bats, but almost the exact opposite early in the season for the Guardians offense. They're having a power surge here. Only one player, Will Brennan, who has 17 at-bats against right-handed pitching this season, has a 0 ISO power number. Everybody else, 211, 188, 250, 250, 200, 250, 286. So a power surge here for Cleveland, maybe early going. And I know it's hard to look at statistics here. Maybe they have a slight advantage at the plate, but again, the better pitcher is Pablo Lopez.
The Guardians 5-2 to begin this season. They just won a game yesterday by blanking the Mariners in Seattle, 8-0. On the other side for Minnesota, they are 3-2. Another American League Central Divisional duel tonight in Kansas City. The Royals booked as a home favorite, minus 174 against the Chicago White Sox. It has not been a great year for Chicago already, 1-4. The Royals not much better though, at 2-4, but booked with the market working in their way as a home favorite tonight in KC. How do you break down the matchup?
How about this one? A balmy Kansas City tonight at 57 degrees. But again, the wind not helping us early in the season in any of these ballparks, blowing in from about 10 miles an hour to left field here. If we're lining up that Kansas City Royals offense, they have a couple guys here on a power surge. And take a look at Soroka from last year. He actually struggled here with right-handed batters and left-handed batters. Limited, though, only 145 batters he faced. But take a look at this. Against lefties, a 278 ISO. Righties, a 268 ISO. Weighted on base percentages last year against lefties, 365 righties, a 415. Take a look at this lineup coming into play for Kansas City tonight. 438 through 18 at-bats against right-handed pitching this season. That's Maikel Garcia in that leadoff spot. And then you take a look at Bobby Witt Jr. 19 at-bats, a 500 ISO power number. Salvador Perez has left the yard this year, 375 ISO. Melendez, 200. Velasquez, 300. Isbell, 333. If I'm looking at tonight's action, probably going to lean towards the Kansas City Kansas City Royals in this spot. The Chicago White Sox, bad team. Bad team overall anyway.
Some interesting issues there in the greater Kansas City area for stadiums and teams and where everybody is playing. There's something to keep an eye on. I'm going to back the Royals as well. And as we look at the American League Central, DRS, last year there was one team that finished above 500. It was the Twins. They won this division. There was optimism entering this year for Detroit. So far, so good. 4-0. The Guardians 5-2. The Royals probably are not a playoff team in the American League, and yet they're not exactly going to be a pushover, and the White Sox are very, very bad. How do you look at the American League Central here in the early going of this Major League Baseball season?
Favorable, because when we typically look at the central divisions of both the American and the National League, they're almost like afterthoughts because you have real those power players and high payrolls on the West and East Coast of both of the Major League Baseball leagues. But the Detroit Tigers, 4-0 in the season, the Guardians, 5-2, the Twins, 3-2, and even the Royals, again, not playing great baseball. We don't have high expectations, but still being competitive at 2-4. And even the White Sox, who we think the bottom's going to fall out in 2024, still won a baseball game here this season. So I like what I see early on, but talking about contenders years heading into October, probably not going to be the case. But the one thing we do know about Major League Baseball, you can't just shut out the Central. Even if, let's just say the Tigers end up winning it and are under 500, if that's possible, they still go to the playoffs and they still have home field advantage in round number 1. So one of those teams is going to have to be in the playoffs. Let's see who it's going to be. But I like the start overall for that division.
The Twins tied for the 5th best price at plus 950 right now to win the American League pennant alongside the Seattle Mariners. Then the Guardians have the next best number out of the AL Central at 25-1 to win the pennant, 31-1 on the Detroit Tigers. Monitor those numbers if this early going success for the division overall continues to be that way into the summer months. So the Pittsburgh Pirates started off a perfect 5-0, their best start as a franchise in 4 decades since 1983. But all good things, as we said at the start of the show, must come to an end. And that's what happened for the Buccos yesterday. They lose 5-3 against the Washington Nationals on the road in D.C. Today, though, Pittsburgh booked as a road favorite to make it a 6-1 start this year, minus 130 on that money line. Will the odds be correct by the time we reach the end of the game today in the nation's capital?
Yeah, we'll see what happens in this one, but you're probably thinking that Pittsburgh is a better overall team than Washington, even though both of these teams not having high expectations for the 2024 season. Weather conditions today, 51 degrees and a wind blowing out. Hallelujah to right field at 10 miles an hour. If we're looking at talent here, Josiah Gray probably would have had wanted to have a better opening day start than he did, but just based on last year's statistics, did struggle a little bit with lefty and righty batters. Today, coming into the game, limited at-bats, obviously, as we know, early to start the season. O'Neal Cruz having a pretty good start, as well as Rowdy Tellez, only 4 at-bats through right-handed pitching so far this season. But if we're flipping it over to the opposite side and saying the matchups with Martin Perez, an okay pitcher last year, the one thing we do know through limited at-bats against left-handed pitching, the Nationals, their entire lineup sits at a 0 ISO power number. That means nobody's getting base hits, and if they are, they're dribbling singles and winding up on first base here. So maybe slightly into the Pirates today, but an over 8.5, why not? Let's go for it. Come on.
Pirates have gone over in 5 of 6 games. The Nats have gone over in 4 of 5. The juice is on the over as well. Final game of the 6-game slate here in MLB. Can the Marlins get their first win of the year? An 0-7 start. Miami on the road under the arch in St. Louis against the Cards. But St. Louis booked as a minus 156 moneyline favorite at the moment, with the market working their way, as you can see.
I mean, you would like to say yes at this point, that they're eventually going to get a win, but going on the road, sometimes hey, it's a little bit easier and the pressure is off here. There's a lot of pressure on the Marlins for getting a win before, let's just say, they lose 10 straight games. Weather conditions around 50 degrees with a 15-mile-an-hour crosswind today, so no real help, but technically blowing out to right field. Ryan Weathers, based on last year's statistics, he got pounded, Ben, from left-handed batters and right-handed batters. But again, here's the issue. Limited at-bats on the season for the St. Louis Cardinals. Every single person on their lineup against lefties, a 0 ISO power number. So certainly not doing anything like, hey, that's something we can point to and think we can get some damage done. The Miami Marlins on the other side, they don't have a lot to cheer about either. At least there's 15 to 20 at-bats for some of these guys against right-handed pitching. But Lance Lynn last year was not a very good pitcher. I don't know if we just said a little sooner or later they have to win, and maybe it is a toss-up today where the Marlins get that victory. But just not a lot of back data here to support the findings of, the Marlins are going to win today.
Total is 8. The Marlins have gone over in 6 of 7 wins. The Cards, the favorites in the National League Central, but the only team at the moment of the 5 with a losing record.